Have you ever imagined you are driving on a long, dark road at night, surrounded by only dense darkness and the sound of wind whistling through the windows? Suddenly, the fuel gauge on the car flashes, then drops to the red line. The car stops, the headlights dim and turn off. In that moment, you are alone. In the cold night, far behind you are strange sounds, footsteps, or the whisper of someone watching you from the dark. Don't think this is just a coincidence or imagination, because there are stories that I am about to tell you that are completely true. Now, are you ready? Let's begin. Story 1. You can plan was simple. Drive up Mount Washington, take in the breathtaking views from the summit, and return before dusk. But as we made our way up the narrow, winding road, nature began to show its darker side. The car suddenly stalled, the engine dying as we neared the halfway point. "This can't be good," I muttered, glancing nervously at the gas gauge, which had suddenly dropped to 0. We were stranded on a treacherous road, with Mount Washington's notorious weather turning against us. "Did you check the gas before we left?" Belle asked, her voice tinged with concern. "I did. It's only half full," I replied, confused. But there was no time to argue, as the sky quickly darkened, clouds rolling in at an unnatural pace. Thunder rumbled overhead, and the temperature dropped so suddenly that our breath misted into the air. The wind picked up, howling through the trees like a chorus of mourning spirits. "We can't stay here. We need to find shelter," Belle said, shivering as the cold seeped through her clothes. We reluctantly left the car, wrapping ourselves in whatever layers we had. The mountain, once majestic and inviting, now seemed hostile, its rugged peaks looming like the fangs of a great beast. As we ventured farther from the car, the landscape grew stranger and stranger. Trees twisted into strange shapes, their branches clawing at the sky, and the ground was littered with bones. Animal bones, we hoped, though something in the back of my mind whispered otherwise. "We're going in circles," Belle said suddenly, panic creeping into her voice. "I've seen that crooked tree 3 times. That's impossible," I replied, though I knew she was right. No matter which way we turned, the road was looping back on itself, as if the mountain were playing a cruel game, trapping us in an endless maze. The wind carried strange whispers, voices that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once, growing louder with each passing moment. "Do you hear that?" Belle asked, her eyes wide with fear. "Let's just keep going," I said, my heart pounding as if it were about to burst from my chest. But the whispers were relentless, a chorus of voices that weren't ours. Screeches we couldn't understand, but that terrified us all the same. Exhausted and frightened, we stumbled upon a small cave, the entrance barely visible in the spreading darkness. "We'll take shelter here until morning," I suggested, though the cave offered little comfort. The whispers followed us inside, carried by the wind that seemed to penetrate even the deepest corners of the cave. We huddled together, trying to keep warm, but we couldn't sleep. All night long, we heard voices growing louder and more insistent, telling us that we would never leave. At times, I thought I saw shadows moving just outside the cave entrance, shapes that melted into the darkness as soon as I tried to focus on them. When dawn finally broke, the storm had passed, but the landscape was unrecognizable. We emerged from the cave only to find the car gone without a trace. The road we'd driven up the day before was gone, replaced by a wide expanse of twisted trees and fog-covered ground. "This can't be true," Belle whispered, her voice trembling. But it was all too real. The mountain had taken us, pulling us into a nightmare with no way out. The whispers were right. We would never leave. And so we were swallowed up by Mount Washington, never to be seen again. Another mystery added to the mountain's long and haunting history. Story 2. It was supposed to be a smooth drive home after a tiring day at work. The road stretched out before me, empty and bathed in the silence of the night. The silence was almost oppressive as the gas gauge dropped lower with each passing mile. I should have stopped at the last stop, but the thought of only a few more miles from home kept me going. I convinced myself I could do it. Fate, however, had other plans. Suddenly, the engine stalled, leaving me on a deserted stretch of road, miles from the nearest town. The silence that followed was oppressive, pressing in from all sides. The darkness outside the car windows felt impenetrable, as if it were closing in, swallowing the outside world. I checked my phone, but there was no signal. Completely disconnected, I sat there hoping against hope that another car would pass. But the minutes ticked by and the road remained lifeless. As time passed, something in the rearview mirror caught my eye, a figure standing just beyond the reach of the headlights. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, a figment of my exhausted imagination. But then it moved, slowly, deliberately, toward me. Panic set in as I locked the door, my eyes glued to the mirror. The figure never came closer. It just stood there watching, waiting. Minutes passed like hours as I sat in the car, paralyzed with fear, unable to look away. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure was gone. I thought it was over, that I was safe. But it was only the beginning. Footsteps broke the silence, soft at first, then louder, circling the car, slow and purposeful. I couldn't see anything outside the window, but I could feel it. A cold, menacing presence, growing closer with each passing second. Despair clawed at me. Without thinking, I threw open the door and dashed down the street, running forward. But no matter how fast I ran, the footsteps followed, always just a few feet away, never advancing, but never retreating. The darkness seemed endless, the road stretching into infinity. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs ached, but the relentless pursuit never stopped. The footsteps were always there, haunting me, reminding me that I wasn't alone. I never knew who or what was following me that night. But one thing was certain, whatever it was, it followed me home. The footsteps, the presence, it never left. Even now, in the silence of the night, I can feel it watching, waiting for the moment I let my guard down. The horror of that night has never faded, nor has the fear that it is not over yet. Story 3. We were only a few miles from our destination when the gas gauge turned red. "We'll get there," I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. The shortcut through the remote plains of Montana was supposed to save us time, but as the sun dipped below the horizon, the world took on a strange, desolate look. The plains, once golden and open, now felt vast and forbidding. "Do you think we should turn back?" Linda asked from the passenger seat, her voice shaking slightly. "We've gone too far. Just a few more miles," I replied, gripping the wheel. But as soon as the words left my mouth, the engine stalled and died, leaving us in the middle of nowhere. The silence that followed was thick and eerie. I tried to restart, but to no avail. "Great. No cell reception either," I muttered, glancing at my phone. The realization of our isolation was painful. "We need to get help," Linda suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. The night air was crisp, almost biting, and the silence around us felt oppressive. As we stepped out of the car, every sound, our footsteps, The rustle of dry grass seemed to echo through the emptiness. As we began to walk, the shadows around us seemed to stretch on forever, their black tendrils creeping closer with each step. "Can you feel it?" Linda asked, her voice trembling. "What?" "Like we're being watched." I wanted to dismiss her fear as paranoia, but I felt it too. A crushing weight, a presence lurking just out of sight. "Keep going," I urged, trying to hide my own growing unease. But the farther we went, the more disoriented we became. The landscape around us began to change in ways that didn't make sense. Trees that hadn't been there before. The path winding in impossible directions. "Didn't we pass that rock?" Linda pointed out, her voice shaking with panic. "It's just a trick of the dark," I said, but even I didn't believe it. Hours passed, or maybe just minutes. Time seemed to lose all meaning. Then, from the silence, a low growl echoed through the night. "What was that?" Linda froze, her eyes wide with fear. "We have to go." I grabbed her hand, and we started running, but the ground seemed to shift beneath us, slowing our steps as if the ground itself were trying to hold us back. The growling sounded again, closer this time, followed by unmistakable footsteps, heavy, deliberate, and not human. "Did you see that?" Linda gasped, pointing ahead. In the distance, two glowing eyes appeared, like embers burning in the darkness, staring straight at us. "We have to run?" I shouted, but no matter how fast we ran, it felt like we were running in place, the road swallowing our steps. Suddenly, Linda tripped, and we both fell to the ground. "Get up!" I screamed, stumbling to my feet. But when I looked around, the road had disappeared. We were surrounded by endless, shifting shadows. I can't find my way," Linda cried out, her voice choking. Before I could react, the growling began again, so close that it brought cold sweat to my body. And then, as quickly as it had begun, the growling stopped. The eyes disappeared. We were left in silence, in darkness, and in a place that was not on any map. Dawn finally broke, but it brought no comfort. The road, the car, any trace of civilization, all gone. We were alone in a landscape that had no beginning or end. The truth settled in like a thick fog. Whatever had watched us, stalked us, toyed with us that night did not want us to leave. And it had succeeded. We were lost, swallowed up by the dark road, with no hope of finding our way out.